Off the coast of Tampa Bay yesterday, one lucky cameraman happened to catch an unusual aquatic daredevil.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And I am Dan Simon, also broadcasting live from the Studio Simon headquarters at historic Bowman Field in Louisville, Kentucky.
Dan, I am back in Fort Collins. I had an amazing baseball trip. I got to see 9 innings of shutout baseball from Christopher Sanchez. Those 9 innings turned out to be part of a larger streak that lasted more than 50 innings. He's 5th all time in baseball right now. So that's pretty cool that we got to see Christopher Sanchez do that. Also pretty cool that we got to stay at your home and have Cheerios as part of our Buffalo Bison's Cheerios episode last week. This week, Dan, this is a first for Baseball by Design. We are addressing a Major League Baseball identity, part of the City Connect program for the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm very excited about this. We've got a great conversation coming up with Warren Hypes and Michael Blandford. Anyway, Dan, I'm rambling. How are you? Good morning. Hello. How are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. Lots of really neat things happening in baseball in addition to Christopher Sanchez's streak of scoreless innings. The pitching, that's really been at the forefront, not just what Christopher Sanchez is doing, but right now, Shohei Ohtani has an ERA, not just sub-1, but it keeps getting lower and lower. His last outing, he pitched however many innings of shutout ball and lowered it into the 0.7 somethings, maybe even 0.68. I don't know exactly. You've got Jacob Mizorowski, however he pronounces his name, throwing more 100+ mile an hour fastballs than anyone has ever since radar guns came into being. Just all kinds of neat stuff happening. So God bless baseball.
Yeah. I just remember when it was a big deal to see a pitcher throwing 100 miles an hour, and now, you know, it feels more commonplace. But yeah, Jacob Mizorowski is really incredible. And you know who else is doing really well in baseball? Not just pitchers, but the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yes, always bringing it back, keeping us on track.
This is cool. As a baseball branding professional, what are your feelings on Major League Baseball's City Connect program? I know that in minor league baseball, we've come to expect lots of alternate identities and a certain amount of brand confusion is sort of part of the deal. What do you think about that at the major league level?
My thoughts about it actually echo friend of the show, Todd Radams. I've heard him talk about this on the Buster Olney's ESPN Baseball Tonight podcast. The first go-round of City Connect jerseys, it seemed like they were trying way too hard, and there were lots of swings and misses. This most recent go-round is, I think, a lot better. There's still ones out there I'm not so in love with, but they're a little more, well, they don't seem like they're trying as hard. They're not trying too hard. They seem to be hitting the sweet spot a little bit more.
I will say there are many City Connect brands that I absolutely love. I think the current Red Sox one with the green monster green, I think that's spectacular. I think that's really, really good. I really like the Serpientes jerseys that the Diamondbacks wear. I think that that's a great City Connect jersey. I like to see brands that sort of tie back to the primary brand rather than going completely wacky. I will tell you, and I'm being very honest about this, it's not just because we're featuring them on this episode. I love, love, love the current Tampa Bay Rays City Connect brand. I think it's a really fun one. I think they did a fantastic job with it. I love how they incorporated the old Devil Ray into it, tied back to the history of the franchise. And we're going to get to talk to Warren Hypes, who had his hands deep into that project. He directed that project, so he's up next. And then we're going to talk with Michael Blandford, who is from the skateboarding community. And he was one of the folks who consulted with the team on that brand. And so we're going to get to see this brand from a couple perspectives. And then, Dan, you're going to be back with a Studio Simon Stumper.
I will. And looking forward to hearing this episode. I'm always looking forward to hearing this episode. So I'm being redundant because I've said it before and I'll be saying it again. I'm Mr. Redundant. So I'll see you in a bit.
You work in Baseball by Design's Department of Redundancy Department.
I do indeed.
All right, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have on the podcast Warren Hypes, who is the Vice President for Creative and Brand for the Tampa Bay Rays. Warren, thank you so much for joining me. How you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. This is an audio only podcast, but you've got some super cool artwork behind you there that I've just been just absolutely eyeing here. So cool. We were talking before we got started that you have it's artwork done by local artists, some of it themed around the City Connect that Tampa Bay has. So this is already, I can tell this is going to be a fun conversation. The Major League Baseball City Connect program has given us a lot to talk about in the design and branding world. I know that you know my buddy Chris Creamer with sportslogos.net. You have talked with him about this as well, so we certainly appreciate that. I want to start at 30,000 feet here. What was your involvement with the Rays City Connect brand? What was your role in bringing this glow and grit brand to fruition?
Yeah, man. Well, first, shout out to Chris. Known him for a long time. It's great, man. And thanks you guys for having me on. I think it's really cool that you guys highlight design in sports and talk about this stuff. So we'll start with that. You know, we had a culture of trust here with our old ownership group and even with our new ones where we really let creative be involved in a lot of things and have a seat at the table. And so, my role, I got to lead up the whole City Connect process. I mean, obviously Nike is very instrumental in that. They present concepts, design the uniforms, those kind of things. But it was really up to me and my team and several folks here to lead and craft that direction. And then more importantly, once we settled on direction to center all the storytelling we wanted to do around it. And so I think people have had various different experiences with their City Connects, but I can't say enough about ours and what we've been able to get out of it from a storytelling and connection standpoint with everyone here in the region.
Well, I already screwed it up. I said glow and grit. It is, of course, grit and glow. You were very gentle not to correct me on that. I appreciate it, but it is grit and glow, not glow and grit. What is that theme, the grit and glow? Where did that theme come from?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you look at the uniform designs themselves, the glow, we took a lot from our old Devil Rays retro uniforms. And obviously, those are very different gradients. They're a lot brighter, more neon in this set, but that's where the glow comes from. We took the original Devil Rays and glowed it up a bit, we'll say. But I think the grit is celebrating so much of the culture here in Tampa Bay that people don't know about. I mean, a lot of people think of Florida as a tourist destination, and we're known for our beautiful beaches and all those things, and those things are amazing. But I think we wanted to celebrate a portion of the culture here that the people don't get to see, especially on a national level. And so, there's a really cool kind of underground subculture here of skateboarding, of art, street art, fashion, music, even. I mean, Tampa is known as the birthplace of death metal, even a lot of people don't know about. And so, not that we wanted to lead into that specifically, but we wanted to celebrate a lot of the things about this area that people just don't know. And it's, we're proud of our beaches. We're proud of all the people who come here to visit us, but there's so much more to the people and what's ingrained into the people here. And so, skateboarding was a beautiful platform for us to tell that story because I think it kind of encompasses a little bit of all of those elements. But, that's really where the grit and glow comes from.
How much explaining have you had to do in your role? Because I think you subverted expectations with this City Connect brand, right? Like, I don't mean to pick on my Phillies here, but like I when the City Connect program started, I remember looking at the Phillies and I was saying, please don't do the Liberty Bell. Please don't do the Liberty Bell. Please don't do the Liberty Bell. They did the Liberty Bell. I think people would look at Tampa Bay and think, okay, here comes palm trees and beaches. And you subverted those expectations in a way that probably requires a certain amount of explanation to people who are seeing this brand for the first time. There's, if I live in Colorado and I don't know that much about Tampa Bay, I don't know about skateboarding. I don't know about this underground art culture. How much explaining did you have to do when this brand first came out?
Oh, I mean, I think there was a ton. There's a ton of storytelling we had to do, but I think we enjoy, as an organization being disruptors and doing things differently. And we've, on and off the field, we've always operated that way. And, look, it's so awesome to have teams like the Phillies or the Yankees or the Red Sox, like all these teams that can lean into their tradition, or the Cubs with Wrigley. I mean, Boston's Fenway uniforms they just came out with were amazing. But I think, because we're still a younger organization in comparison, we really can take a swing and do things differently than other teams have been able to do. So, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely took a lot of explaining. I was very lucky. We got to show the players in the clubhouse first. They were the first ones to see it before you released anything. And one thing I talked to them about is people could say like, "Oh, what does skateboarding have to do with baseball?" But they're both athletes where failure is the norm, I mean, you look at a guy who hits 300, he still fell in 7 out of 10 times, and you look at these guys who are skateboarding, and you may see them on TV or competitions just landing these tricks every time, but you don't see all the busted elbows and the busted heads or well, whatever else getting scraped up injuries that happen along the way to that. And so I think both are sports where it takes a lot of failure to be good. So, it was a lot of storytelling, but I think, we weren't afraid to take a swing at it. And I think, we saw the fruits of that by being able to do something very different.
One of the things this brand does is it brings the Ray back into focus as a central piece of the Tampa Bay Rays brand. When the team rebranded from the Tampa Bay Devil Rays to the Tampa Bay Rays, I will always remember that was 2008 because I'm a Phillies fan and we faced each other in the World Series. But you went away, as a team, you went away from the Devil Ray itself and towards the Sun Ray. That Devil Ray never really went away, and you've brought back the retro uniforms, and now that Ray is incorporated into this City Connect brand. How important is the Ray itself? How important was it to tap into the history visually of the organization to bring that Ray back in the City Connect brand?
I think it's ultra important. I mean, look, 2008 was such a great story, right? Worst to first, something that not a lot of people in the sport have seen for a long time. And I think a lot of that was a product of an ownership change at the time and wanting to kind of shed the losing ways from our past and drop a little bit of that baggage and try to launch a new brand that says, hey, it's a new organization, new ownership, new way we're operating. And for a long time after that, we stayed away from the Devil Rays brand because for so many, I think internally and externally, that those gradients and everything, as magnificent as they are, they're kind of like teams with a lot of losing seasons and even record-breaking losing seasons. And so I think, when we did our 20th anniversary celebration in 2018, I believe it was, we brought those back for just a limited time to celebrate the 20th anniversary. We only wore them 5 dates that year. And, I think the fan feedback, the reaction we got from everybody on those was amazing. And that kind of prompted us to put them back into the style guide permanently. And we're still wearing those today. And so, I think as we looked at City Connect and how we could connect it with the rest of our brand, I mean, I think putting the Devil Rays into it was a natural fit. And like I spoke about, we took the gradients and all those great colors we had before, but we definitely like amped them up to a new level. And yeah, man, it's very exciting.
You mentioned the gradient blends. The gradients, they are magnificent is the word for it, right? Like, and it's I always quote John Hodgman that nostalgia is a toxic impulse. But the gradient blend, right? Like throwing back to that sort of mid 2000s, late 1990s, the gradient blend, is sort of that era. We're seeing more of it. We're seeing it come back. And when Chris Creamer and I talk about gradient blends, we always mention the Devil Rays, right? Like the Devil Rays are like the sort of iconic gradient blend team. We saw it in this, the round of 8 City Connects that was just unveiled. In particular, that Kansas City Royals, every single design element on that Royals City Connect, the new one, has gradient blends in it. Do you associate the Devil Rays with gradient blends the way Chris and I do, or is that do you think it's a larger element of the design world from that era?
I mean, I definitely always, I mean, I'm biased, I live in our brand 24/7. So I think naturally I always gravitate towards us for being a good example of that. But look, man, we're lucky we live in a digital printing age now. It's funny talking to, I started here in 2010, so I didn't necessarily have to deal with it as much, but talking to some of the folks that had to work on some of our early projects back when you had to do color separations and all of that with our gradient, and it was just a nightmare. I mean, even back then, you'd have to pay by color that you would print. Like even the cost of, I don't know, business cards or whatever back in the 90s was like tenfold what it would be for any other team. But I love that the other teams are leaning into it too. I mean, I thought the Royals did a great job with theirs. I think it's really fun. I think it's different, and happy to be the banner carrier or whatever you want to call it for the gradient. And I love to see it still in the sport, so it's good, man.
I want to talk about just a couple of the marks here because there are some. I'll tell you, I don't wear a lot of gear from teams that are not the Phillies. I love this cap logo with the Sunshine Skyway Bridge and the Devil Ray incorporated into it and the neon and the gradient blends. I love that cap logo. I imagine that's been one of the most popular marks here. I want to ask you about some of the other marks, but that one in particular, the decision to incorporate the bridge, which I know can be a thorn in the side of some people trying to get to the ball game, right? I'm going to try to formulate this into a question so it doesn't sound like I'm just gushing here, but it's a really cool mark. How has it been received?
Yeah, it's great, man. It's funny we put that mark out and we didn't even have a name for it yet. And I wish I could credit whoever this was that said it first, but immediately on the internet it was like, "Oh, it's the Sky Ray." And so great crowdsourcing, that's what we call it now. I think when we were building the uniform, it's tough here because we're not the Tampa Rays, we're not the St. Pete Rays, we're the Tampa Bay Rays, and we encompass a whole region. And so, where I think a lot of other cities may have, a skyline or some other elements they can use, we have to look at something that represents a symbol of the whole region. And so, a lot of times that ends up becoming the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which is a very prominent landmark here. And so, when we were going through the design process, we have the flame Tampa Bay letters across the jersey. That's inspired by like Thrasher magazine, again playing back into the skateboarding theme. And we explored some like flaming TBs for the hat, but I think one thing that we saw that was really missing on the rest of the uniform, you've got the skate ray and all these fun elements, but we really needed something that tied back into the region strongly. And so, that's when I had an idea and went back to Nike and I'm like, hey, what if we just like built a ray out of the bridge, and they were very great to work with on all of it. I think I did some sketches sent over to them and they took whatever I had and made it 1,000 times better than what I'd come up with. But it just let us ground this whole set that's so out there and kind of purposely outrageous. So let us ground it back in the region.
So you mentioned the skate ray. There's a very literal connection between skating and baseball in this brand, or at least skating and the Tampa Bay area. That is very specific, and you literally have a Devil Ray with a skateboard here. That was an intentional decision to make that connection very clearly, obviously. What went into that decision to make that very literal and specific and direct connection to the skateboarding community?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to misanswer your question here too, just for a little background of people who don't know. Everybody associates California with the skating movement, but here around the same time, a lot of people thought Tampa was the East Coast capital of that. You had the Bro Bowl, which was a very famous landmark skate park that was almost like built out like an empty pool over in Tampa. You had a lot of people building vert ramps in their backyards here in St. Pete. And so, again, we wanted to play into that culture and tell people a story that, regionally people here know, but people don't know on a wider scale. And so, I mean, look, that mark is outrageous, right? But I think that's what makes it special. I think we just had fun with it. We wanted to do something that's out there that no one would expect. And I think it delivers on that. There's also a type of ray known as a skate too. So that's another fun little Easter egg about that. Yeah.
Warren, I know we were talking off air about the word authenticity kept coming up, right? Like we talked about the word authenticity, and I know that for you that involved working directly with the skating community. What did that process look like for you, and why was that so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for this to hit the way it needed to, again, you mentioned the word authentic. We wanted to make sure the skate community here didn't feel like we were just appropriating like their culture. I think there's a very fine line we could have hit with this to where it's like, oh, this major league team's trying to take this underground world and make money off of it or rip off our culture. And I think the making sure that we did this the right way was so very important. In the process, we put several people from the local skate community here under NDA and brought them in very early in the process before we wrote a script for the launch video, before we started talking about visuals, any of that. And so, Michael Blanford at Skate Park of Tampa was key to that. Chris Markovich, who's a legendary skater and has worked with us on several things, was in on that early. And so I think making sure you tell the story is important, but making sure you tell the story the right way is even more important. And I think we've followed through on that. We're a sponsor now for Jake Alardi, who's a local former Olympian skateboarder here out of Sarasota. And so I think it was more than just talk. We followed through, on our mission to make sure this is authentic and it's connecting and elevating the community that we wanted to elevate with this story.
And do you feel like since it was unveiled in 2024 that it has been received the way you hoped and intended by that community?
Absolutely. I mean, the connections we've been able to make here with this program that we wouldn't have made otherwise with the Rays have been outstanding. I mean, there's a guy named Florida Frank who's a famous metal guitar player. He plays in a band called Hatebreed, and him and I met through this program because we sent him a jersey. Good friend of mine now, but it's cool, man. He's on these huge European metal fest tours where there's 80,000, 100,000 people, and he's up there rocking our City Connects. And we've had so many skateboarders, both local and national, come out to the ballpark. And even the connection we've had with the art community here, I think it's been really, really cool just to see the way this has expanded. And I think that our goal to make it authentic is what's made it be able to perform the way it has.
One of the other, I'm obviously on your website and I'm looking at the marks here, but there's the Three Palms logo with the pelican, all in neon, and so it to me evokes kind of like a beachside motel, right? Like and the sort of visual aesthetic with all the neon at large, and in particular this one with the palm trees and the pelican has a very distinctive feeling to the area. Really makes me feel like I'm in a beach town looking for a hotel at the end of the night or something like that, right? Like that's a cool logo that I haven't seen as much as I've seen the Sky Bridge and the skate ray. Did I get the Sky Bridge? Is that what's called Sky Bridge?
Sky Ray.
Sky Ray, darn it. I'll
Thank
just
you,
say
Internet. Yeah.
But that's also a cool logo and really evokes a sense of place in my mind when I look at that.
Yeah, it is. It's yes, number one, you hit it on the head. It does look like almost like a vintage motel. It looks like it could be made straight for one of those little plastic key card holder things that they used to have, the little keychains back in the day. Actually, the three palm trees is a logo that's on all the Florida Heritage Site signs here around the state. And so, there's I don't know, various ones throughout the state, historical markers talking about different things. And that Three Palms logo comes directly from that. The Pelican too is something known for our area, but also very, very distinctly for St. Pete here where we play. And so, combining those into something like that is really fun.
So you all unveiled this City Connect brand in 2024. Is this the third year?
This is the third year. Yep,
Okay.
we started playing it in 24. It was pretty fun playing outside in black uniforms at Steinbrenner last year. It was
Of
about
course.
100 degrees outside. I'm sure all our players and our manager loved me for that.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we're still every Saturday here at home this year. We'll be wearing them.
So I would venture to say, just anecdotally, that this is one of the more popular City Connect brands, and one that was received very well. And obviously, everyone on the internet has an opinion about every single thing, and so you're going to see a lot of that. But when you have a popular City Connect brand and the program is designed to change it up every 3 years, is the plan for next year? May I ask about this? Is the plan for next year to go completely a different direction, or are you going to find a way to maybe update this brand but not move all the way away from it?
Maybe we'll save that one so we give some folks a little surprise when we go out with the next one. I will say that it's having something that's so successful, I think this sets a level of expectation, for what we are expected to deliver to our fan base and to everybody else in the baseball world for it. And so as much as I love having the success of the first one, it does put a little pressure there to try to top that or change it or improve upon whatever it may be. But I think the fun thing about the City Connect program is you could ask 10 different people what their favorite one is, and you may get 10 different answers. And I also wanted to dissuade some people. I think a lot of people want to hate on some of the ones that go out, but whether you love or hate them, I think a lot of people don't see how much work goes into each one of these from the team side, from the league side, trying to make something special. And maybe some of them didn't hit quite as well as ours did on a national level, but so much goes into this and people work so hard on it and trying to make it special for the team and for the fans. And so, but the fact that there's so much diversity in the program and in what different people like, I think makes the whole program pretty special.
Well, I have really enjoyed getting the opportunity to chat with you about this brand in particular, just because I think it's on its face, just by itself, a terrific brand. And then within the context of the City Connect program, I love what you all accomplished by tying it to the history of the team and yet still creating something brand new. So, Warren, where can people, sometimes I'm talking to minor league teams and I say, where can people go to find you online? People know where to find the Tampa Bay Rays, but if they wanted, more information about this brand or the work that you're doing, where might you send them?
Yeah, my Instagram is Warren WAREN_hypes HYPES, and I have an X account and Facebook and whatnot, but I think I'm probably most active on Instagram, as a lot of creatives are. Very visual platform. And look, man, I want to thank you guys for what you're doing. Sports design is so fun and exciting, and it's constantly evolving. But it's a field now that's tough, right? You look back at the last 10 years or so, it's the first time in human history where you're working hours and hours to create something, and the shelf life for it because of social and digital is so short these days. And so, everybody's constantly trying to crank things out and make every project better than the last. And I just appreciate you guys highlighting, sports design and talking about uniforms and branding and all this stuff. It's you guys are going a long way by promoting us and everything that we're working hard to do. So thank you for what you do, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I love getting to highlight the work that designers are doing out there. It's my background is graphic design as well, and like you said, every single team is working really hard with talented designers to create brands that that take hours and hours and hours and weeks and months of work. And so this work deserves to be highlighted, and I'm very happy to do it. And I appreciate you making yourself available for the conversation because I know you're busy and it's not something you have to do. You're not getting paid for this, so I hope that's not a surprise. By the way, you're not getting paid for this, Warren. So
Hey, buddy, I'll talk design all day, every day for free, anytime, man. Very
well,
happy to.
well, the next time we're in Tampa Bay, like I said, Ranger Amy has family there, so the next time we're in Tampa Bay, I'll look you up and we can have this conversation over a beer instead of over Zoom.
Sounds great, buddy. I'd love to, man.
All
I'd be
right.
happy to have you.
Thank you, Warren. All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to have on the podcast Michael Blanford, who played an integral role in the formation of this Tampa Bay Rays City Connect brand. Michael, I'm just going to jump right in and start with that. First of all, how are you doing this morning? Joining us live from Clearwater, Florida, spring training home of my Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, you got to come down, Paul. I'll buy you an ice cream helmet next time you're down here for spring training.
You are speaking my language, Michael.
Yeah, I'm a Threshers season ticket holder
Very
and
nice.
lifelong baseball nut, and of course a skateboarding person. So that's how this connection sort of comes about.
You have been involved with the skateboarding community in formal and informal capacities for 30 years, and you got involved with the team and you were brought in to consult on skateboarding culture. How did that happen? How did you get involved with the team?
Well, I knew Vince Caffiero, who's the art director with the Rays. I knew him sort of informally through Big Brothers Big Sisters. I was the executive director of Boards for Bros at the time. It's an international nonprofit. We distribute free skateboards globally. We do a lot in the Tampa Bay area. And I met Vince through Big Brothers Big Sisters. The Rays have a really rich culture of volunteerism. So if you go to any volunteer event, you'll find Tampa Bay Rays people there. And Vince called me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to come down to the ballpark and have a talk with you." Of course, I'm thinking, what the hell does a Major League Baseball team have any interest in having me come down to the front office to talk to them? Because there was NDAs and all that. So I had no idea why they were calling me down there. But they wanted to show me this concept for City Connect, which was to sort of integrate skateboard culture and sort of tell the story of Tampa Bay's skateboard history through these uniforms, which of course is an insane idea, the idea of doing these things. But it's, one of the luxuries I think of being the Tampa Bay Rays is you can be a little weird and a little different. If you're the Boston Red Sox or the St. Louis Cardinals, you're sort of, restricted by that history a little bit, where the Rays can be a little strange, and they've done a great job with that. So I was not involved at all in the design elements of this. People that are really good at that stuff did all that. So when they showed me sort of the mock-ups for the uniforms, amazing right from the beginning. And the deeper you get into it, and they, all these elements, sort of celebrate these different parts of skateboarding and sort of the peripheral skateboard culture. And really, one of the first things why they wanted to get me involved, and it's very admirable, was to, they want to make the point. They want to do this sincerely, or they didn't want to do it at all. And I think that was really cool. The idea, and they've stressed this over and over again in the early stages of this, is they weren't interested in co-opting skateboarding culture, to make a buck off it, to come in and say, hey, baseball needs a younger demographic or whatever, skateboarding's cool, let's do that. They really already kind of knew the story, and they wanted to celebrate skateboarding and not co-opt it. And they made it very clear from the beginning that they weren't interested in doing this unless it came off genuine. And it did right from the beginning. They sort of understood that skateboarding is sort of this hub at the center of this broader culture. So there's all these things, connected loosely or not, whether it's punk rock music, heavy metal music, tattooing, street art, photography, all these things that are kind of connected to these creative elements of the skateboard culture. So that was the other thing they understood. This was about skateboard culture and skateboard history, and not just skateboarding as a sport or an activity or as sort of a subculture, whatever. And they did an amazing job with all of that.
It's not a story that, as an outsider, I would have expected to see Tampa Bay tell, right? And I think that's what makes it so cool is I'm learning about all of this. I didn't know anything about Tampa Bay's skateboarding culture. What is that skateboarding culture, and why did it grow up the way it did in Tampa Bay?
Sure. Well, I think when people think of skateboard culture, Los Angeles is always the first thing people think of. Certainly, the skateboarding business is based in Los Angeles, but everywhere along the way, as long as there's been skateboarding, Tampa Bay has held this really profound place. We have the first public skate park in the United States here in Tampa, the Bro Bowl. So that's where the nonprofit Broads for Bros gets its name from. This was built in the 1970s by the city of Tampa, which was unheard of back then. Now every city has a public skate park. And then all along the way, Tampa Bay's been there when anything's big been happening in skateboarding. So when the skate parks, the first wave of skate parks start to disappear, Tampa Bay becomes this center of skateboarding through backyard ramps. That's where the culture moved, the half pipes. And every pro in skateboarding was coming through Tampa through those years. And many pros came out of the Tampa area in those years that, became stars in sort of the vert skating arena. And then we move on to sort of the next stage of skateboarding. And we have 1993, the skate park of Tampa opens, a most famous skate park in the world. It's been holding pro and amateur contests since it first opened in 1993. And the easiest way to think of the skate park of Tampa is, in our world of skateboarding, it would be the equivalent of Wimbledon or the Masters. So it's this skaters contest. And of course, there's much more to skate park of Tampa than these Tampa Pro and Tampa Am contests, but they really are sort of the world center for competitive skateboarding. We have had numerous Olympians come through. Every pro in skateboarding, part of their story takes place at the skate park of Tampa one way or another.
You touched on something that I think is really important, and it's something that, Warren brought up in our conversation just now, which is how important that authenticity was to the team, to really involve the skate community, and, to borrow your phrase, to not co-opt skateboarding for to make a dollar. How did they do that? How does a Major League Baseball team convince this deep-rooted skateboarding community that it's not trying to make a buck? I would think that would be such a hard sell to make, that, like, honestly, we're not just doing this to make money. We're doing this to really celebrate this community.
Well, the skateboarding community, like many others, it's very inclusive, it's very welcoming, it's very open, but at the same time, it's protective of its thing, and every sort of subculture is like that. And so I think the Rays recognize that right off the bat. It's not surprising that these guys kind of got it. Warren grew up in a baseball family. He's a baseball person to the core, but he's also a metalhead and super into heavy metal music. Vince, the art director over there, plays in a hardcore band and grew up playing punk shows at the skate park of Tampa. So these guys know baseball and baseball branding and that sort of thing. But they also, sort of understood the culture a little bit coming into it. So this wasn't completely fresh to them. But right away, they were like, hey, they wanted to do more than just put a skateboarding logo on a baseball uniform. And it's really amazing. First of all, they should be commended for really understanding the City Connect assignment, and I'm not going to, say anything about any of the other teams, but they really got it, I feel like. And they looked at their community and they're like, hey, what's something maybe people don't know about we can bring some attention to. And right from the beginning, it wasn't about, hey, we want this to be some branding thing. They wanted to really integrate with the skate community. And if you were to go to skate contests over the last 2 years, you see kids skateboarding in Tampa Bay Rays gear. Never seen that before.
Hmm.
You see tons of skaters at the ballpark. I've met so many skateboarders I didn't know were baseball nuts like me, because we're sort of this cross pollination between baseball and skateboarding that's been going on. They sponsor a pro skateboarder. I'm confident we're the only major league team that sponsors a pro skateboarder, Jake Gilardi, who's an Olympian. And they were there, really, if you were at anything skateboarding related in the last few years, the Tampa Bay Rays had kind of plugged into that and in a really genuine way. And from my side of it, from Boards for Bros, where we're trying to raise money and awareness and advance our mission of distributing free skateboards and making it equitable, they were right there to say, hey, let's find a way to give out 200 skateboards in St. Pete. I'm right in the, we have a world-class skate park right in the shadow of Tropicana Field. And so it was a great way for the Tampa Bay Rays Foundation to step in and say, hey, let's give out skateboards. Then it was like, hey, let's build a skate park at a Major League Baseball game. So we were able to, right out in the left field corner, build a skate park at a game against the Baltimore Orioles. They brought in pro skateboarders like legends to throw out first pitches. There's murals all over the city that are sort of an intersection of skateboarding and baseball. And so that was the other thing, right from the beginning. It was basically like, hey, if we're going to do this, let's do this. Let's not just, talk about skate culture. Let's be there. Let's be a part of it. And they really have pulled it off in every way possible. And the vibe has been great at these events, and it's we've got Raymond, the mascot, out at skate events now. And for someone like me who loves baseball and skateboarding, I never saw an opportunity really where they would intersect, but here we are.
You mentioned before we started recording that you are outdoors right now, which I absolutely love because, Zoom does a pretty good job of filtering out a lot of ambient noise, but I can hear the birds there behind
Yeah.
you, and it's filling me with joy right now. It's
Yeah,
filling me with
good.
summertime at the beach joy. So
All right.
I promise to the listeners, I'm not CBS and the Masters right now. I'm not pumping in those bird sounds.
Well, I live in a neighborhood. We have hundreds of peacocks have infiltrated our neighborhood. Infiltrate is kind of a negative word. They have kind of mixed reviews with the neighbors, but we have hundreds of them. And so we've gotten off lucky. They're not out here screaming. It's breeding season right now. So it sounds like Jurassic Park out here sometimes.
It is absolutely charming. I'm loving the ambient noise right now. I want to reiterate something that you said, that the Rays 100% understood the assignment. I'm borrowing your phrase again because you phrased it perfectly there. The way that this brand is part of the larger Rays brand, right? Like it's not something completely brand new that has nothing to do with anything, but it is also something new, right? Like the fact that it is part of the larger Rays identity while also being something brand new is really a remarkable accomplishment. It's definitely one of my favorite City Connects. Warren and I did talk about the individual marks, and there's the one where it literally has the Ray holding a skateboard, right? Like, so
Yeah.
that's a little on the nose, right? Like it's a little bit like, hey, here's
Yeah.
a skateboard
Yeah.
community. My favorite is that cap logo. I love the Sunshine Skyway Bridge
Yeah.
incorporated into the shape of a Ray. Is there one within the skateboarding community that really stood out to that group?
Well, definitely the skate ray, as we call it, the ray on a skateboard, because it just reminds you like how crazy this whole thing is. This, oh, we're gonna have a ray riding a skateboard. But I think one of the really cool things, and maybe this is more on the design side of it, is I assume the Rays will probably keep some of these marks as part of their broader design language, which I don't know that a lot of other City Connects will do that. I would be shocked to see the skate ray go away at the end of the City Connect this, City Connect series. And certainly with the Sky Ray, logo on the cap, I'd be shocked if that wasn't integrated somewhere into, something. I don't see the skate ray staying as something that'll be on part of an on-field thing, but the logo on those caps is fantastic, and I would be shocked if that wasn't, just didn't become part of the whole sort of design language of the race.
The interesting thing about the City Connect program is that these identities only last 3 years. And, this one's coming up for, retirement soon. And, sometimes you'll see like the Cincinnati Reds kept their City Connect brand intact, but then just made some tweaks to it. The Kansas City Royals did something similar. I'm really hoping, obviously Warren couldn't comment on this, but I'm really hoping that the Rays will do something similar, that this identity will live on. Maybe they'll augment it or change it in some way, but that this sort of core City Connect brand remains, in the next iteration for this team. Well, so you said the skate community likes the skate ray. I like the cap logo with the bridge. Is there one that you in particular like?
Of course, it may be on the nose, but the skateboarding ray is absolutely, I love it. It's so crazy. And maybe that part of, I've been a minor league logo nut like my whole life. I've been wearing minor league hats for 45 years, from back when it was hard to find them. Now it's, easy to get minor league caps. So I've always liked some of the, sort of more out there logos. And so the idea of a stingray riding a skateboard is fantastic. But I really think that Sky Ray, as they call it, the Skyway Bridge logo, is such a great logo. And I'm sure they're going to find a way to keep the momentum going on these things.
Well, I have to take this opportunity to thank you, because you were familiar with the podcast and you reached out to me and you facilitated the connection with Warren. And so without you, this episode doesn't happen. So I very much appreciate you doing that. And, Warren, I appreciate that he jumped through a certain number of hoops within the Rays infrastructure, which is certainly understandable. So you and Warren both did a lot to make this episode happen. So I appreciate that from both of you.
Well, I think it's a really cool story, and it gets cooler the deeper you look into it, which is great. So any opportunity I have to tell the story of where these uniforms came from, I love.
Well, Michael, this is so cool. I really appreciate this conversation, and I appreciate you. Where can people find you online? I know that you're not associated with Boards for Bros, but if people want to find them online and see the work they're doing, where can they find that?
Yeah, boardsforbros.org. It can either be boards for with the letter, with the word, or with the number. It's a great organization. The idea is to make skateboarding equitable. A lot of times skate parks are built in the lowest income part of the area. And so it's an organization that's out there giving out free pro level skate equipment to kids in those communities and saying, hey, this skate park is for you. Skateboarding offers so much for kids, whether it's a physical outlet to get them off the couch. It's the best place to meet the most creative people you're ever going to meet. So I always say you go to the skate park to learn how to skateboard, and then you leave and you joined a band and you learned photography while you're there. So I think that's the great part about it. And Boards for Bros does a lot to advance that.
Michael, that is super cool. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed making this connection, and can't wait to meet you in person and take you up on that offer of an ice cream helmet at a Threshers game.
You got it.
Deep within the recesses of his secret headquarters, somewhere in Louisville, Kentucky, sits Dan Simon. By day, Dan is the owner of Studio Simon, but by night, he tries to stump one Paul Caputo. This is Studio Simon Stumpers.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time for Studio Simon Stumpers. Dan, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for waiting. What a fun episode. It makes me want to go swimming with manta rays. Sorry, it makes me want to go swimming with devil rays.
Have you ever... you've traveled the world. Have you ever been in the water where you've seen a ray? I have been in Key West. We did a sunset boat cruise, if you will. Not so much of a cruise, just the boat went out
Yeah.
They fed us some hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and it was actually really nice. And I saw something I didn't even know rays did. And this was not a devil ray. This was a manta ray, and it was giant, and it breached. It jumped out of the water. It wasn't like a ray watching boat thing. It was just going out and enjoying the sunset from a boat. And I'm just sitting there like looking out of the water, and all of a sudden this thing just jumps out of the water, and it surprised me and also delighted me. Have you ever seen that? Or have you ever been in the water with any types of rays? Because I've seen unlike Steve Irwin, it's not necessarily always dangerous to be in the water with rays.
Yeah. Well, Steve Irwin was killed by a freak accident, right? Like that was just a weird freak accident. Dan, snorkeling is one of my all-time favorite activities. If I can't be at a baseball game, put me in the water, put me in the ocean with a snorkel. I love it so much. And to answer your question, yeah, I've had a couple of signature moments with rays, different kinds of rays. One time in Puerto Rico, I was snorkeling and there was an eagle ray, go birds, and it was this great big thing with white spots, and it was super cool, and it was quite large, and I was swimming, I don't know, maybe about 20, 30 feet behind it, and just sort of cruising along, and it was just sort of cruising along, and I followed it. I don't know how many minutes, but I remember looking up and thinking, where is everybody? Because I had followed this eagle ray for a long time. It was just so peaceful and lovely. And then I was in Hawaii one time, and I snorkeled with the giant manta rays, and that was wild, right? Like it was a nighttime experience, and they bring you out as part of sort of an expedition, and they give you these like devices to sort of hold on to, and then they sort of know where the manta rays are going to be, and you see them circling up towards you, and you can like, they're eating krill, right? And like you can just look down their gullet as they're coming up at you, and it's sort of terrifying because they're ginormous, but they're not going to, all they eat is the krill, so they're not coming for you. But that was an incredible experience, being in the water with a whole bunch of giant manta rays. So yeah, they're very cool, and I love the ocean, Dan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, my studio assignment stumper today is not about rays, because this episode, of course, is about their City Connect jersey or uniform. Do they have pants that are specific to it as well?
Yeah, it's a whole set.
Okay, so City Connect uniform, but it's about the city, because, that's what City Connect's supposed to be about, is connecting to the city.
Yeah.
So the city of, when I was doing the Tampa Tarpons visual brand identity development, they, of course, at the time were the Tampa Yankees and were going for their own name. And even though they eventually went to a name that was previously used by teams in Tampa, the Tarpons, they were considering other names as well. And part of my research involved looking at city nicknames. And that's what our studio assignment stumper is going to be about. And it asks, which of these is one of the city of Tampa's nicknames? Is it the Big Guava, the Big Mango, or the Big Papaya?
None of those are jumping out at me. And all of my research, Dan, was about St. Pete, where the Rays play, rather than Tampa. So I spent hours and hours and hours researching St. Pete. And now you're throwing a curveball at me with a Tampa question.
This is one where you either have heard it before or you haven't. So
I'm going to say the Big Papaya, Dan. It's a guess, but I like the way Big Papaya rolls off the tongue.
Well, the answer is neither the Big Papaya or the Big Mango. It is the Big Guava.
The Big Guava.
Now, one would be inclined to wonder, why is Tampa called the Big Guava? Is Tampa known for guavas? And the answer to that is no. But here's the story behind it. And I don't have the gentleman's name, but this goes back to when Tampa was not this huge city. It was actually very sparsely populated at the time. We're talking about, the early 1900s. Maybe it even goes back to the late 1800s. Can't be the late 1800s. It's when the railroad was just about to come to Tampa. So whatever time that was. If you have a guess as around when that would have been.
I do not.
Okay. So anyway, I wish I had better information about this, but you don't need to know exactly when this happened for me to tell this story. So there was a gentleman who had heard that guavas were there were like wild guava trees in Tampa, and he went down from wherever he came from, I think somewhere in the north, to Tampa to investigate, and found that there were no guava trees there. The reason for that is the climate, even though it is, I guess you can term it a tropical climate, you have occasional freezes there, as has been discussed in the falling iguana. Is that what they were called?
Frozen iguanas.
Frozen iguana alternate identity. Previous episode of the Baseball by Design podcast. If you haven't listened to it, you can go back in the archives and learn all about freezing weather in Florida and what it does to iguanas, and what it would do to guavas is kill them, because they wouldn't just fall out of the trees and then wake up once it got warm. Those trees, I guess, can't survive freezes. So, however, this guy saw that there was no guava, but he thought it was just a great place, and the railroad was scheduled to be brought to, I guess, Flagler. Do you know that name? He's the one who brought the railroad into Florida and all the way down to Key West, ultimately. I think it was Flagler. He told him about it, and Flagler then came, and that was like the beginning of Tampa growing into the city that it is today. And it was because of the guava, which never existed there.
Huh. The big guava, and they were just trying to come up with like a Big Apple style nickname, and they're like, well, everyone from New York's coming down here for the winter. Let's make them feel at home with a big fruit nickname. And they came up with guava, and they don't even have guava.
Yeah. So do you know any other nicknames for the city of Tampa?
I don't. No, I didn't know Tampa had nicknames.
Well, one of the names is Cigar City, perhaps not surprisingly.
Oh, I should know that because we talked about that in a stumper previously.
Right.
And I said, do they have tobacco there? And you said, of course they do.
Yes, they've got a big Cuban population. And when we talked about this, I did not know the proper pronunciation of the area of Tampa called either Ybor or Ybor City,
right.
Ybor.
Yeah.
And they're famous for making cigars there. Also, one of their nicknames, and this is a more recent nickname, is Tampa Bay, because you've had the Tampa Bay Lightning, you've had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, major sports teams. The Lightning have, I think they won at one point recently 2 Stanley Cup championships in a row.
Back to back.
Right. And I guess Tampa Bay has won 2 Super Bowls. I think I'm right about that. So Tampa Bay. Probably some other nicknames too, but let's not belabor the point.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great minor league baseball in that area. Ranger Amy of Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent fame has family in the area. We've gone and actually stayed in St. Pete and walked to a Tampa Bay Rays game. And then we went to a Tampa Tarpons game while we were there, went to a Clearwater Threshers game. It's a fun area for baseball, that's for sure.
Yes, it is indeed. I've been there. I've seen a Tampa Bay Rays game. Now, I haven't seen a Tampa Tarpons or before that a Tampa Yankees game, but I myself have played at George M. Steinbrenner Field when I went to the New York Yankees fantasy camp there.
That's fun.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. So yeah, great baseball down there in Tampa. And as you mentioned, Tampa Bay Rays playing great baseball right now. So
that's right. At the time of this recording, in first place by half a game. Hope that maintains.
Head of the aforementioned New York Yankees.
Of your New York Yankees as we're heading into the All-Star break not too far away. Dan, thank you as always. We'll see you again next week.
I will see you then. Bye.